please rise and join us in singing the Philippine National Anthem, to be immediately followed by our prayer.
Panginoon, sa gitna ng pagkalito at takot na bumabagabag sa amin, balutin ninyo kami ng yakap ng inyong pagmamahal at proteksyon. Palakasin po ninyo ang aming mga katawan. Patuloy na patnubayan ang aming pamilya at mga mahal sa buhay. Tulungan at gabayan po ninyo ang aming mga lider sa kanilang mga desisyon. Pagkalooban ninyo ng lakas ang mga frontliners sa kanilang pagsugpo at pagharap sa karamdamang ito. Aming Ama na pinagmumula ng aming kalakasan, kayo po ang magkaloob ng kagalingan sa lahat ng patuloy na lumalaban sa sakit na ito. Kayo po ang aming sandigan at takbuhan. Sa inyo po ang aming buong pagtitiwala. Dahil alam naming sa gitna ng krisis na ito, hindi ninyo kami pababayaan.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Kagitingan, the PVAO Historical Webinar Series 2021. I am Maggie Grace Sahagun.
And I am Nico Oreiro. We are your hosts for today. Before anything else, allow me to acknowledge the presence of the following: PVAO Administrator Undersecretary Ernesto G. Carolina, PVAO Deputy Administrator Raul Z. Caballes, Aguilar, PVB Vice President Mr. Mike Villarreal, Mount Samat FTES Administrator Mr. Francis Initorio, Dr. Neil Marshall Santillan from the University of the Philippines, Dr. Jose Romel B. Hernandez from the De La Salle University, Dr. Archie B. Resos from the University of Santo Tomas, Professor Marlon F. Agoy-Agoy, MC from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. We would also like to acknowledge the presence of our other partner, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Right now, we have about 78 participants here in Zoom. For those who were unable to pre-register, we are currently being broadcasted via Facebook Live on the official Facebook page of the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office.
Okay, so before we officially begin the program, here are some reminders for all of us. In case there are lags, just stay and wait for it to load again. Zoom attendees are on mute to avoid background noise. If you have questions, you may use the message box or use the comment section on the Facebook live stream. After the webinar, the participants who registered are encouraged to answer the evaluation form. The link will be sent to their email afterwards. Now, just a quick recap in our first episode, which was held on February 26th, we have learned more about the Battle of Manila. Ms. Desiree Benipayo and Dr. Ricardo Jose shared some of the untold stories of the battle and some of our unsung heroes during that time.
Our resource speaker for today, Associate Professor Augusto V. de Viana of the UST Department of History, will be presenting one of the most talked about fables in the Philippines, the controversial Yamashita Treasure, a myth or reality.
So without further ado, let us begin our program with an opening message to be given by the chairperson of the UST Department of History, Dr. Archie B. Reso.
It is with pride and honor that the University of Santo Tomas Department of History has partnered with the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office and other agencies in disseminating historical information about World War II. The courage exemplified by the Filipinos through their triumphant stand and gallant opposition against the oppression sowed by the invaders is truly noteworthy to mention. Through the Kagitingan, the Philippine Veteran Affairs Office Historical Webinar Series, the advocacy to propagate public appreciation of veterans' heroic deeds, the fostering of unity and providing inspiration by developing a sense of national pride, especially amongst the Filipino youth as future defenders of the country, is manifested through scholarly endeavors such as these. This is indeed a noble task on the part of the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office, headed by its indefatigable administrator, Undersecretary Ernesto G. Carolina, to educate and enrich the knowledge of the audiences about Philippine military history, particularly World War II events, to rekindle love for country, especially amongst the Filipino youth, and to propagate historical awareness amongst the Filipinos and other viewers regardless of age. On the part of the University of Santo Tomas, the Department of History, we will complement the vision of the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office by establishing closer partnership with your agency and various academic institutions involved to stimulate enthusiasm among the participants in studying history and to promote the possibility of future researches, analysis, and publications about the military history of the Philippines, especially during the Second World War. This is our humble contribution to stimulate public awareness of Filipino bravery and instill the value of honoring veterans to the public. Again, to the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office and all partner agencies, congratulations. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Archie V. Reso, for your welcoming message.
We are honored to introduce our speaker for today, Associate Professor Augusto V. de Viana of the University of Santo Tomas Department of History. Professor Augusto V. de Viana acquired his doctorate degree in history in the University of Santo Tomas, where he also took his degree in Bachelor of Arts in Asian Studies and Masters in History. Before joining the academe full-time, Dr. de Viana was the chief of the Research, Publication, and Heraldry Division of the National Historical Institute. He was also the former chairperson of the Department of History of the University of Santo Tomas. His research interests include a wide range of topics in Philippine history, Japanese History, World War II, Philippine-Japanese Relations, Micronesian History, History of the Malay World, Oral History, and Documentary Research. Dr. De Viana has written at least 6 books on Philippine history, World War II, and the history of the Marianas, among which was Apos and Ampalaya, Bittersweet Glimpses of the American Period and the Philippines. Collaborator, the issue of political collaboration in the Philippines during World War II. He has authored a textbook for the Rizal course. As a co-author, Dr. De Viana wrote 6 books for Araling Panlipunan. He authored more than 30 articles on history, which appeared in the Sejarah Journal of the University of Malaya, the History Journal of the Charles Sturt University, New South Wales, Australia, and Jurnal Kajian Wilaya of the Indonesian Academy of Sciences, in addition to local journals like the Unitas and Filipiniana Sacra of the University of Santo Tomas. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Augusto V. De Viana.
So, good afternoon. I'm going to talk about the Yamashita Treasure. Is it a myth or reality? So, it has been more than 70 years since the end of World War II. But yet, there's still a persistent rumor or information about the existence of the so-called Yamashita Treasure. So, what is the Yamashita Treasure? So, it has been, its existence has been debated since the end of World War II, and there are many widely circulated stories that General Yamashita or Tomoyuki Yamashita was supposed to have stashed billions of dollars worth of gold, jewelry, and precious metals in various places in the Philippines. Who was General Yamashita? General Yamashita was the last commander-in-chief of the Japanese military administration in the Philippines. He was known as the Tiger of Malaya, known for his stunning victory over the British in Singapore early during the Second World War. After his victory, he was summoned. He was sent to a rather unimportant post in China, and he stayed there until he was summoned to come to the Philippines to command the Japanese forces in 1944. So General Yamashita supervised the defense of the Philippines until the end of the war. Under his personal command was the Shobo Group, consisting of 152,000 officers and men who were dug in what they called the Banban, San Fernando, and Kiangan Triangle. That would be in northern Luzon. They also fought engagements in the Cagayan Valley. The other large groupings of Japanese was the Kembu Group. The Kembu Group under Lieutenant General Rikichi Tsukada, covering Central Luzon, and the Shimpo Group under Lieutenant General Shizuo Yokoyama. So there were other Japanese forces formerly based in Manila, but they moved to mountains east of the city. So this would be in the areas of Montalban, the areas of San Mateo, and the western Sierra Madre Mountains. Yamashita's command skillfully retreated to Northern Luzon, where it held up American and Filipino forces until Japan surrendered on September 2, 1945. On that day, Yamashita and his officers emerged from their hideout to surrender to the Americans in Kiangan. And there were parts of Northern Luzon that never fell to the Americans and Filipino forces. It was said that during the Japanese retreat, they were said to have taken with them loot taken from various places that they occupied. This included the wealth in the form of bullion, gold bullion, silver, precious metals, and jewelry taken from various parts of Asia. And this enormous wealth, amounting to several thousand tons, was supposed to have been shipped to Japan and from various places in Southeast Asia. And the stolen treasures were supposed to sustain Japan's war effort. So to keep the war going, and the treasures were supposed to be moved by sea from various places in Asia to Japan. But because the Japanese were prevented from shipping the treasure because of the threat of increased submarine attacks, so the Americans were sinking Japanese ships at a very fast rate that it would be impossible to ship the treasures to Japan. And it was decided that the treasures remain in the Philippines. And it was rumored that the Japanese hid the treasures in various places where they have retreated, especially in areas where Yamashita made his last stand. Okay, so at least 3 towns were particular suspect. These were the towns of Hongduan, Tinok, and Kiangan, all in Ifugao province. And also there were areas where the Shimpo group had retreated. This would be the provinces of Rizal, Laguna, and Quezon. There were also another area where suspected place where treasure was said to be stashed. It would be the area where the Kenbu group operated. It should be in the areas of Zambales and Bataan. So I'll try to enlarge the map. Okay. And there are also suspect areas in the Visayas and Mindanao. In Davao, which is the site of the largest Japanese community in the Philippines, Davao was supposed to be one of the treasure sites. And one of the areas that said to harbor the Japanese treasure was this monument called the Kyosaburo Ota Monument. It was erected to honor Kyosaburo Ota, the founder of the Japanese trading company, was based mainly in Davao. Other areas would be in Zamboanga and Cagayan de Oro, around Dapitan, and the Visayas, it would be around in Cebu and the Panay area. And the suspected existence of treasures found various activities. It's found people trying to dig and looking for treasure. Okay, and also various tunnels were made. Millions of pesos were spent on treasure hunting activities, and local government became involved in the act when they issued treasure hunting permits. In fact, one mayor told me that is some kind of a cottage industry in his town. The lure of treasure also spanned of fakes and scams, preying on the gullible and weak-minded, such as there are scams like the fake gold bar scam, wherein people try, just add more money and we will part you with this gold bar that we found. And it turned out that the gold bar turned out to be lead painted in gold. Gold is quite heavy, and it's also supposed to be maps pointing to location of some Japanese treasure, and they were exchanged for money by some unscrupulous people. Was the Yamashita treasure real? According to an American author, Sterling Seagrave, and his wife, Peggy, the Japanese Emperor Hirohito ordered his brother, Yasuhito Chichibu, to transport loot from Japanese occupied areas. So this is Prince Chichibu, and he was said to be in charge of the transport of the loot from various parts of Asia to Japan. And according to Seagrave, around 6,000 tons of gold were looted, but this could not reach Japan, but instead they were stashed in various parts of the Philippines. And according to Seagrave, there are around 209 alleged treasure sites in the Philippines. And there's another part of his story in his book, Yamato Treasure. He said that there's a super secret vault in Japan containing maps pointing to where the Japanese treasures were located. Okay, so according to many stories, Japanese treasures were stashed in various areas of the Philippines, and the ones who buried the treasures were killed by the Japanese to prevent them from talking. And the sites where the treasures are located had booby traps in them, and they're cleverly hidden. There are many treasures stories that indicate that there was indeed treasure. One proof was the cruiser Nachi, which was sunk as it tried to leave Manila Bay on November 5, 1944. And it was alleged to have carried bullion on the way to Japan. Official reports said that valuable intelligence was recovered from the vessel. For example, the coding machines, the documents, the books, but there was no mention of treasure. But there's also conspiracy theories say that it carried gold bullion that was recovered by the Japanese. And there are numerous stories about treasures being found, and there are stories about their location. And these stories appear to be substantiated with the recovery of some valuable items. For example, maybe 1 or 2 gold bars, sometimes even a sack of money or jewelry. And these were made by eyewitnesses, stories made by eyewitnesses. I'm going to tell you about these persons later in the slide. Okay? So the Japanese were said to be interested in the recovery of the treasure. After the war, many Japanese came back, and there are many stories about them going back to the place where they fought, or they were instructed by the people who were here to go to this certain place and look for this certain landmark, start digging a few feet into the ground, and you'll find treasure. And this became very obvious or very common, especially during the construction of the Pan-Philippine Highway, which we now know as the Maharlika Highway. The highway, which was built with the rehabilitation funds or reparations money from Japan, passed through areas which were former Japanese stronghold, such as this area, the Cagayan Valley area in eastern Luzon, as well as through Quezon province and in the Davao area and the Caraga region, the same areas where Japanese treasures were said to exist. And the so-called surveyors, according to them, according to many stories, had been digging in the guise of highway construction, and when the treasure was recovered, the highway was partially finished. And that was the story. Okay, so the Americans were also interested in recovering the treasure. According to the Office of Special Services, which is the predecessor of the present Central Intelligence Agency, information about the gold was known after torturing a Japanese officer named Major Kojima Kashi into revealing some of the locations of the treasure. And according to them, some maps were actually found. And the alleged treasure was said to fund anti-communist activities in Asia. And the gold was said to have funded the CIA, and the OSS became the present Central Intelligence Agency. Yeah. Now, popular myth about treasure sites. We have the Teresa Treasure Site in Teresa Rizal, the Montalban Treasure Site, and there are various sites in the Cordillera and Sierra Madre area. In the Teresa Treasure Site, said to be part of a mine where the Japanese, with around 6 to 12 trucks, all loaded with treasure, they were driven into a tunnel, and the tunnel was sealed with explosive, and those who dug the tunnel were killed. So that would be in the Teresa site. According to Primitivo Mijares, a former confidant of Marcos, they found the treasure and they found the tracks still intact. Of course, after going through several booby traps. And the Montalban site where some gold pieces were recovered, including some coins. And also in the Cordillera area, especially in the Hongduan, the town of Hongduan, because I talked to the mayor there and said, one of my activities was giving permits to treasure hunters, and they did find something. Okay, were there really treasures? So right here in Quezon City, that's what you call the Christ the King site. The Christ the King compound used to be the Makapili headquarters during the war. And one of the old timers, I met my former professor, Father Hermogenes Bacaresa. He did say that treasure was suspected in the site, and Marcos and his presidential security group, as well as some private contractors, dug up the site. And according to him, something were recovered. And this would be in the area where a posh village, right behind the Christ the King compound, is now located. And he told me also that the grotto in the compound was actually the entrance of a tunnel which led to the area now a part of St. Luke's Hospital. So it was an escape tunnel, and now it's now blocked by the grotto to the Virgin Mary. Again, and so Father Bacaresa told me that, and again, a question would arise, why would he tell me if he was just making up a story, considering he was an esteemed and well-respected historian. If he was just pulling my leg or not telling the truth or just telling a tall tale, why would he tell me that? Okay, and also there are other stories about the diggings right behind the Christ the King site. Okay, the greatest claim was that someone did find the Yamashita treasure, and that would be President Ferdinand Marcos. According to Seagraves, Marcos was so obsessed in getting the Yamashita treasure, and thus even when he was not yet president, he had, according to him, already found part of the treasure, and this was confirmed by Imelda Marcos herself. So when Marcos became president, allegedly he used the Presidential Security Command to secure treasure sites and cart away things that are actually found. Yeah, so again, before he became president, his wife, Miss Imelda Marcos, was said to have been shown a vault by her husband filled with gold bars. And that was before, when he became president. He was then only a congressman. According to her, to impress her, she showed her a vault, saying, showing some gold bars. And Marcos claimed that he found part of the Yamashita treasure. Okay. If this was true, Marcos had committed a crime, because under the law, treasure from unauthorized digging should belong to the government, all of it. Okay. If the diggings were authorized, the treasure hunter was allowed to keep only half of the treasure. So you're only allowed to keep half. That's the law. Because the National Museum once authorized French underwater archaeologists, if they find somebody in the Philippine waters, just like they did with the Pandanan wreck, half would belong to the finder and half would belong to the government. So, okay. I'll make a correction. Okay. So, yeah. So, yan. Primitivo Mijares, who used to worked with Marcos, was the source of the information that about Marcos finding the treasure from Teresa Rizal. That several trucks loaded with gold were driven into a mining tunnel and the entrance was blown up. And Marcos was said to have gotten information about the treasure. And of course, Primitivo Mijares later broke up with Marcos and wrote this book, Conjugal Dictatorship, revealing the insides or the inner affairs of the what he called the conjugal dictatorship of Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos. So I will discuss later whether Primitivo Mijares was credible. Okay. And also we have the story about the Golden Buddha. The Golden Buddha is about a Baguio resident around in the 60s, late 60s, was claimed to have found a statue, a Golden Buddha, right behind the Baguio General Hospital. It was in a cave behind the Baguio General Hospital. And the statue was hollow because it contained gold bars, precious stones, and according to him, it also contained a rifle with no bolt. And the statue weighed almost a ton. And Rogelio Rojas had to have somebody help him carry it. And according to him, he was quite careless in keeping the statue because it was in front of his house, visible to everyone who'd pass by. And Marcos got wind of the treasure and sent the Presidential Security Command to seize the Buddha, the Golden Buddha of Rojas. And Marcos was said to have hired a local sculptor to do a replica of the Buddha. When Rojas tried to recover the statue, he found out that the statue is not anymore made of pure gold. It's now made of bronze, and it's not the real thing. So it was not. So it has been. There has been a switcheroo. Napalitan na raw. Yeah. So when Marcos fled to Hawaii in 1986, American Customs found out in his luggage several boxes containing gold bars. The question is that did it come from the Yamashita Treasure? The Marcos Treasure is still with the U.S., still in the United States. And also, the treasure was said to have carried some stampings, a stamp that's with the words Malabar. Again, is this part of a treasure taken from other countries, let's say India, Malabar, India, or some kind of a code name? Ayan. So the treasure still remains with the United States because the United States confiscated the treasure when Marcos fled to the United States to Hawaii in February 1986. Ayan. So the gold, if returned, can save the Philippines. So imagine having, let's say, 6,000 tons of gold. So it will be the answer to save or paying off the Philippine debt. Okay, since we are heavily in debt to the other countries. And also the price of gold will plummet because if you measure all the gold that has been mined throughout the world, that 6,000 tons would be around that amount. So you'll be probably doubling the amount of gold in the private reserves, and also the gold being used as jewelry. And there's also a story about this giant platinum ball, which was found in Mindanao. Again, platinum is a metal that is twice as costly as gold. And when platinum was said to have been discovered, the price of the platinum in the world market fell. Later, it was found out that the silver ball did not turn out to be platinum, but just a an alloy of lead used by a weight by ships, which has broken away. Okay, so another story about Yamashita Treasure would be in Fort Santiago. The Fort Santiago venture, there are rumors that Fort Santiago harbored Japanese treasure because the fort used to be the headquarters of the Japanese Kempeitai. Charles McDougall negotiated with the government of President Cory Aquino to allow him to dig inside Fort Santiago. And according to him, diggings happened, it took more than 6 months and more than 100 feet deep until it reached the water table. It's actually starting to flood. And according to him, that he hit a something metallic like a steel vault. And after that, he never mentioned anything. The excavation site was fenced off, and Fort Santiago was off limits to visitors. Okay, so the opposition attacked the administration of President Aquino, saying that McDougall was desecrating a national shrine, and Juan Ponce Enrile, who was the head of the opposition, accused Ms. Aquino of allowing the such desecration. So again, there's a problem about the McDougall site because although McDougall, when he stopped digging, he was still convinced that there was treasure inside the fort, but the water started to intrude. You know, Fort Santiago is right beside the Pasig River. Okay. Another American, former U.S. General John Singlob, claimed to have known many of the sites in the Philippines because his command, when he was a soldier in the Philippines during World War II, they managed to obtain some Japanese maps. And he was sent to in possession of several Japanese maps. And when he became a senior officer in the U.S. Army, he had a disagreement with President Jimmy Carter and forcing him to retire. And he used he held onto the maps, and he used that to continue digging in many places in the Philippines between 1986 1987. The name John Singlob was practically many contents of newspapers, and this man is quite mysterious. Nothing much is known about him, and he was said to be anti-communist, and he may have been using the treasure hunting activities as part of the anti-communist activities of the CIA. Lately, there are still excavations still happening. Back in 2018, 4 Japanese were arrested in Zambales for illegal treasure hunting in Capones Island. So according to the police, 4 Japanese were arrested, and they paid people 1,000 pesos to dig tunnels to look for the treasure in Capones Island. And Capones Island happened to be a natural preserve in the western coast of Zambales. Okay? Now, skepticism. Why would the Japanese in 1944 stash enormous amounts of treasures in the Philippines? Already, it has been mentioned that the submarines made it hard to ship gold to Japan. So they decided to keep the gold in the Philippines, make secret maps, and try to recover them after the war. So that's why also treasure was found, and maybe 1 or 2 gold bars, mostly jewelry, coins, but none of the amount mentioned as part of the Yamashita Treasure. Okay. Was there enough time for Yamashita to stash the treasure in the country? You know, he came to the Philippines in 1944. And after that, by September, the Americans started attacking, and by the following month, October, they now landed in Leyte, and by By December, they were attacking Mindoro as well as attacking Manila. They landed in Mindoro. And Yamashita had to prepare for the evacuation of the government, including the Philippine Republic under President Laurel. So then from Baguio City, they went to Cagayan. From Cagayan, the government was evacuated to Japan. And now again, places like Baguio City, the Cagayan Valley area, were rumored to be the secret hiding places of the treasures hidden by Yamashita. Question: did Yamashita say something about the treasure? There was no mention about treasure during Yamashita's trial in Manila for atrocities committed by Japanese during the war. And, Yamashita was later hanged for being implicated in the atrocities, especially the massacre of Manila. The perpetrators of which were never really under his command. And if he knew about the gold, he could have made a deal with his prosecutors during trial. For example, in the Unit 731, the notorious Unit 731, which produced the chemical and biological weapons of the Japanese, its head scientist, Colonel Shiro Ishii, managed to cut a deal with the Americans. And Shiro Ishii, his unit, killed and murdered a lot of people, making them guinea pigs and test subjects for viruses and other diseases. And he was granted immunity because he shared Japan's biological secrets with the Americans. If Yamashita knew about the treasure, he would have cut a deal and saved himself. Okay? So again, you go to the reconstruction of the facts. We start with Rogelio Rojas. Rogelio Rojas did find the golden Buddha in Baguio. And Marcos found out and got wind of it and used the president, the National Security Group, to confiscate the treasure. And the treasure actually contained some gold and jewelry. According to Rojas, the statue's head, you can access the contents of the statue by removing the top of its head, yung bumbunan. It can be removed, and that's where you can get the jewelry and the gold, as well as other contents. The statue that was shown to him had its head being taken off. Ibig sabihin, natatanggal yung ulo. The head can be taken off. And of course, Rojas said that the statue that was taken from him was made of gold, pure gold. And the statue that was shown to him was made of bronze. It said it was not it. He claimed it was a reproduction. Now, to verify what he said, years ago, I myself made acquaintance with a sculptor. His name was Florante Boy Caido, the son of the celebrated artist Anastasio Caido. And he said that he admitted to me that he was the one who made a replica of the statue, and that Marcos had orders that he should be killed because he knew about the story. So I asked, why are you still alive? But buhay ka pa. So what he did was he pleaded, and he hid. He pleaded and he escaped, and he said that he will not mention anything. Okay, he only said that to me long after Marcos had died. Okay, and I knew Boy Caido personally, and I would think, why would he lie to me? Bakit siya magsisinungaling sa akin? Why would he lie to me? And what would he gain by lying to me? So that's that is my version. Yeah, unfortunately, Boy Kaido had passed away several years ago. Ayan. Maybe you can also talk to his son, si Florante Jr. You can also talk to him. He's also a sculptor. Yeah. So, ayan. The court ruled that Rojas was the owner of the Golden Buddha and that Marcos unlawfully took it away from him. So, ayan. Ay na sinasabi na Buddha na sabi na ay fake kasi So dapat ang bumbunan natatanggal. Pero ito natatanggal yung ulo. The head is being screwed out. So according to him, this one, it was fake. And according to, how about the existence of the Golden Buddha? In one of the vaults owned by Imelda, according to one eyewitnesses, the Golden Buddha was one of those vaults in the possession of Imelda. Allegedly, Allegedly. Okay? Now, there are legal issues. Now, who really owns the Golden Buddha? So, based on Philippine law, all treasures found by treasure hunters like Rojas should belong to the Philippine government because he was digging without a permit of the government. So, the ground was disturbed and the patrimony of the nation was disturbed, and he was digging without a permit from the government. If he had found a permit, he had a permit from the government, the treasure will be divided 50-50 between the treasure hunter and the government. Ayun. Those are the legal issues. And even today, you can get a treasure hunting permit either from the National Museum or from the local governments, or siguro baka they might ask you to get the two permits, one from the National Museum and the other from the local government. Yeah. So according to one insider in the National Museum, there's a fee. I think it was 6,000, if I'm not mistaken, for a treasure hunting permit. But a few years ago, an official of the National Museum was arrested because he was demanding what they said allegedly he was demanding 120,000 pesos. And of course, according to the complainant, the official was sitting on his application and demanded 120,000 pesos. Ay nakwento. That is what I hear from the news. So again, these all allegations. Okay, so anybody can get a treasure hunting permit. Get it from the National Museum as per their requirements. And also you can get it from the local government. Of course, in both cases, you also have to pay fees. So if the Yamashita treasure was real and found in the Philippines, other countries who were the sources of the treasure will demand restitution. Certainly, since they were the origins, they would certainly demand that the treasures would be returned to them. By the way, there was another story from Thailand that there were dozens of golden Buddhas found in one temple. In fact, I went to Thailand myself and I did find several Buddhas. Most likely, the Buddha that was taken by found by Rojas might have come either from Thailand. That's my guess, or Burma. So, okay. As of present, myths of the fabled Yamashita treasure persist because there are some people who are obsessed with the get-rich mentality. And this includes not only Filipinos, but even foreigners like Japanese, Americans, and other nationalities have been doing treasure hunting activities in the Philippines. Again, because the myths of the treasure persist. So one of the historians, si Ambet Ocampo, one of the historical writers, said, will you believe that there's a Yamashita treasure based on a few bags of coins? Um, so most likely the treasure is like this. It is not, treasure does exist, but they're not likely from Yamashita. That's my opinion. Second is that there was treasure that exists that not to the level, of the billions of tons of or thousands of tons of gold mentioned by Primitivo Mijares. Again, speaking about Primitivo Mijares, is his story credible? I would take it with a grain of salt because Primitivo Mijares had a falling out with Marcos, and soon he began writing against him, and that's why when he fled to the United States, allegedly, or it was said that he was kidnapped by pro-Marcos agents, taken to a plane, and made to walk home from 2,000 feet in the sky. So, in short, he was thrown off an airplane or a helicopter. So, yeah. So, again, his statements should be taken with a grain of salt. Now, how about the treasures? For example, I had other stories which are personal. I got it personally, including from my own relatives. My own relative said that after the war, there were sacks of coins that were dug up, and these were coins that were confiscated by Japanese and compiled into sacks, and they were told to guard the sacks of coins, and that was the closest thing that they found to the Yamashita treasure. Again, the treasure may have come from the Filipinos themselves. Treasures such as the coins. How about the jewelry, the gold? Well, part of it may have come from governments, but that would be not to the level of the. That's my opinion. Not to the level of the what is has been fabled. Another thing that Marcos owned hundreds of gold bars. One veteran told me that Marcos probably kept not the actual gold bars, but the gold certificates, because the Philippines, as we know, is a gold mining country. And Marcos could have gotten his hand on the gold that was from the Philippines. The gold that Marcos had may have come from the Philippines instead, not from Yamashita. Hinuka yan, minina dito, because we are one of the top 10 gold mining countries in the world. Marcos may have gotten those gold bars either by taking them from the central bank or may have bought them himself. And of course, he would have traded them in the international market. That's why he had, and also why Marcos had some gold bars in his baggage when he fled to Hawaii. Again, this may have been not from Yamashita, but from the Philippines itself. Again, that's my analysis. So, and of course, one way of preserving money. How do you preserve the value of money? You preserve your money by buying things that will not depreciate, such as gold. That's why if you have a lot of money, whether you got it from legitimate or illegitimate sources, you convert it to a medium, turn it into gold, and have it melted and into bars or tiles, and that's your gold, and it will never depreciate. So again, how about Mrs. Marcos telling him about the gold bars? Again, this may have been the story told to her by her husband, and of course that's what her husband told her, and she would be what you call in historical analysis a secondary source. Secondary source, Imelda, because her husband told her na I found the Yamashita treasure. And so again, she had no idea where Marcos actually got the gold in the first place. He can just make a spin a web on a story. For example, let's say I found the treasure of Atlantis. So, um, and of course, that would be either based on secondary source, which is quite hard to validate. And you still have to validate. Okay, so if primary sources have to be validated, and so do secondary sources, and that's the rule in historiography. Now, going back again, si Father Bacaresa, would you believe him? Probably, because I would raise some question. Why would a respected historian tell me of the digging in Christ the King? So, ayan. Of course, I would not believe too much Primitivo Mijares because he had an axe to grind against Marcos. Okay? Imelda, well, secondary source siya. So, the real primary source is now dead. Like Yamashita. And he never mentioned anything about gold. The conspiracy theories was that when Yamashita surrendered, he was taken in by Americans, and there he was made to rebuild the gold. And after that, in order to keep the secret silent, to keep the information silent, they executed Yamashita. Again, that's a conspiracy theories belief. Pinatay nila para hindi makasalta si Yamashita. Yamashita was executed along with Homa so that they will not anymore dispute or talk about the treasure. So, how about Rojas? What Rojas did was to find a treasure, and he had no way of knowing whether it came really from Yamashita. It may have been taken by some Japanese officer or official and stashed in a cave in Baguio. So, paano malaman kay Yamashita yan? Again, but the problem is, even Rogelio Rojas passed away several years ago. So now, therefore, some say that the Yamashita treasure is the unsolved mystery of World War II, and some say it was totally a myth. Some would say it was a myth drawn up by Marcos to divert attention from where he actually got his wealth. So ayun, gawa-gawa lang ni Marcos yun para may divert yung attention kung saan nanggaling kayamanan. And of course, even if he found a treasure, he would be guilty of a crime, okay, of not reporting the treasure to the Philippine government. And he was digging or obtaining a treasure without a permit. None of the treasure should belong to him. And now we have even President Duterte saying that the Marcos gold can save the world. Pati si Duterte na even President Duterte was being made to believe. So I would think that the value of the gold was transferred into real gold. The money was transferred into real gold, and it was used as a way by Marcos as a hedge against inflation. Gold never depreciates; it never loses its luster, especially in times of, let's say, pandemics, including us. So you still keep gold even if there's a civil war, there's a world war. You have gold, therefore you are safe, you are secure. So who has the gold has the law. The gold, follow the golden rule. Or it could be another thing. Maybe Marcos was collecting jewelry. That's another thing. That's another one of my theories. And the jewelry would be melted down into gold bars. Pwede rin. Eventually, he would collect several bars of gold. So, ayan. Now, speaking about the golden Buddha made of pure gold, actually, I find it hard to believe because a statue made of pure gold would be very fragile. very fragile. I would think if it was really gold, maybe 12K, not certainly not 18K. So, um, um, so again, but again, so far, no country is claiming Rogelio Rojas as Buddha, or the Buddha was said to be in the bolts of Imelda. Wala, there's none. So if there was really gold, there was really treasure, why hasn't one country coming up and asking, take a look at the treasure and later claiming it as its own, so that it could be can be returned, and there will be restitution. Okay, so again, we go back to the original question: is the Yamashita treasure real or not? Again, it depends. It depends. So it depends on the source that you're talking to. So my take is that if it was real, it is not as that big. Not, and that ends my my talk today. Thank you very much.
Proceed to the next part of our program. I am giving the floor to Ms. Felici Lois Lanya, our Q&A moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Nico and Miss Maggie. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I am Felicia Lois Lanya, and I will be your moderator for the Q&A portion today. So we are now going to open the floor for the questions from the audience and the public. For our FB viewers, please place your questions on the comment section. And for the Zoom participants, please place your questions in our chat box. So we already have here some questions. Good afternoon, Professor Viana. Sir?
Much. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, loud and clear.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, sir. So we already have some questions here. So we're going to start with one of our FB viewers. Her name is Jasmine Ang. And regarding the gold that the US confiscated, will it ever be returned back to or back from the US here to our country, I guess, sir? Or will it be forever left with the US?
First, we have. I believe that the 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 baggage of Marcos, which included the gold bars, I believe it's under litigation, and so we have to solve that and and pursue. The government should pursue the return of the treasure, but again, it's under. I believe it is under litigation, and we should watch what the courts will say about that.
Thank you very much for that, sir. Next question po. Another one from our FB viewers. This is from Jose Carlo Ibabao. Question, sir. In regards of Japanese ships that had been sunken by U.S. submarines, is it one of the ships called Atago flagships by Admiral Takeo Kurita? Is that also carried the gold bars before it was sunk by an American submarine in Palawan?
There are many ships that are listed. Another one would be this vessel that left Subic, and it was torpedoed by an American submarine. And it's also, by the way, it's what you call one of the hell ships. Aside from carrying cargo, it was also carrying prisoners of war to be evacuated to Japan, so that they will be used as slave labor. So yeah, so again, there are many speculations that some vessels were actually carrying treasure coming from the Philippines, and one of them would be the Atago Maru. There's another one, I don't remember the name, but it came from Subic. And also the one of I already mentioned the cruiser Nachi. It sank in a very shallow area. It's only about 100 feet. And according to, again, Mijares, the treasure was found. But, you know, we rely on the official documents saying that only valuable equipment such as code books and communications equipments were recovered from the vessel. There could be more, because of we should also look at the maps where submarine attacks had taken place.
There you go. Another one from another question here, sir. This one is from one of our Zoom participants, Sir Mr. Rafi Lian Beltran. Good afternoon. Greetings from Cebu UST Talamban Campus Sat Dash. Hello, Sir Augusto. Are there
Yes.
really documents in archives now, either here in the Philippines or US, that really show the authenticity of Yamashita Treasure?
That's quite a difficult question because, of course, you have some maps and you have to authenticate. By the way, the maps they are written in code. They are written in code, and you have to ask what the code is all about. And there's another problem because there are a lot of people selling what they call the real treasure maps, but they're actually fakes. And actually, there's a cottage industry in fake gold, fake treasure maps. And sometimes the so-called treasure were discovered by accident, such as the construction of a road, or somebody building his house and recovered something, and you assume that it's part of the treasure. In fact, there's many types of treasure that were recovered. There's because my own father, by the way, he's a guerrilla, and so right after the war, they found sacks of coins, and I believe that those coins came from the Filipinos themselves. They don't come from from other countries, as said by Seagraves or some other people. I would like also to share another thing. I also failed to mention. You know, when Admiral Minechi Koga was shut down, not shut down, his plane suffered engine trouble somewhere in Cebu. And aside from the box containing the important documents, we know now today as Koga papers, the box also contained bits of gold. Apparently, gold is a part of the possessions of Japanese officers. So Koga included. So and the eyewitness, I think, I forgot his name, Gantuangco. When he opened the box that was bobbing up and down near his house in Cebu, I believe it was San Francisco, Cebu. He opened it and it contained a silk bag, and part of it contained some gold. So again, there's another angle. The gold could be part of not of Yamashita's treasure, but could be the possession of some Japanese officer. That's another angle that we have to look into.
Thank you very much for that, sir. Another question from one of our FB viewers. This is from Nigel Tan. Here's his question. Why would Buddhas or gold treasure come from Thailand, considering Thailand was was an ally to Japan?
Yes. So the official story, the story popularly known, is that the treasures were being moved to Japan, so that Japan will be able to continue its war. So, but the problem is that the defensive arc of Japan was getting narrower with the successive Japanese defeat, and there's a need to move whatever treasures back to Japan so that it'll continue the war effort. So even so, when Thailand or Siam at the time was allied with Japan, it became a source of treasure, allegedly, because we have no proof that it really came from Thailand. It may have come from another Buddhist country like Cambodia, or let's say Burma, or even Laos and Cambodia. We still have to verify that, because we still have to verify. We have to ask where the treasure or the Buddha may have come from. Okay.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Sir, follow-up question. Should we like discover this Yamashita treasure now? So Thailand would be one of the countries who has the right po dito sa treasure na to, tama po ba?
Yeah, I think they have to establish ownership. Sa inyo ba talaga nang galing yan? So as I said, if real treasure was found, it could open the gates to claimants. And of course, as I said, if the treasure was legitimately found, meaning with the proper permits from the government, either from the national government through the National Museum, or through local governments where the treasure digging was being done, so the treasure hunter will get 50%. And what if the original source of the loot, I say loot, would try to make a claim? So lilit pa yung share niya. Yeah. So again, but with that, the alleged original owner should prove that the treasure actually came from him, or from his country. Okay.
There you go, sir. If in case nga po, sir, the treasure was legitimately found, it really is true. How much would that treasure be? How much of that treasure is, Philippine government, yung pagmamay-ari ng Philippine government?
Well,
May habol po ba tayo dito?
Well, it should be no, it's legitimate. It is 50%, 50-50 ang hatian. Ay ng usual arrangement.
And depende pa po yun sa kung ilan pa yung magki-claim na country.
Yes, ganun nga.
Thank you very much, sir. Another question from one of our FB viewers, or Zoom participants rather. So this is from John Paul Abeleria. I was told that the U.S. Army dumped silver coins in Manila Bay during World War II. Is this history true? If yes, how much would be the value of this treasure?
That is true. One of the activities of the U.S. Army, not just the U.S. Army, but even the Commonwealth government, was to dump bullion, not just coins, but bullion into Manila Bay, just off Corregidor. And the location was marked. And after the war, the bullion was recovered. The coins were recovered, but it has been said that some of the coins still remain at the bottom of Manila Bay, and that was true because they really found some coins. Regarding the war, it would be the what you call from the vault of the Philippine government. So it would amount to millions of pesos, not just in gold and silver. So the silver coins as well as gold bullion may have remained. Most of them were recovered, but they say that until now that some coins were recovered even long after the war, and these were recovered by private persons. Okay.
Thank you for that, sir. Another one from our Zoom participants. This is from Mr. Ray G. Carolina. After more than 7 decades of investigations, do we have a bottom line conclusion regarding the existence of Yamashita's gold in the Philippines? Has someone sorted out the hearsays, the alleged finds, the conspiracy theories, narratives from pundits, authors, and so-called experts? We need vertical evidence whether Yamashita's gold is real or myth. So do we actually have somebody, or do we have an institution for that, sir?
I know there are some persons that I know, so both in the Philippines and Japan. And of course, Seagraves would be one of those, but he passed away a few years ago. Again, they're talking about some shadowy matters. You really need to discuss whether it was a reality or not. So, but from the way I see it, the treasure as fabled as Yamashita doesn't exist. What I see would be bits of treasure coming up once in a while. Although there's another thing, for example, why would people like Primitivo Mijares would weave such as a story like trucks being driven to a tunnel and getting sealed, and all those who participated were killed, and that Marcos found it. So again, so you really have to investigate. Or it might have been another tall tale of Marcos. Hindi natin masasabi. We cannot say. What I could see is that the treasure was not the same magnitude. Say, actually, during the time back in '86, when our external debt was 25 billion, some would say that the worth of the treasure was 25 billion, just enough to pay our external debt. And some say 6 billion, and some they would say something else. But again, you have to put yourselves in the shoes of Yamashita himself. Did he have the time to stash the gold? Okay, to stash the gold. If you have, let's say, 6,000 tons of gold, 6,000 tons of gold, assuming he had 6,000 tons of gold, how can he stash the gold without anybody knowing. Dami-dami yan. So 6,000 tons. And how to stash 6,000 tons of gold without anybody knowing, without somebody discovering. So from what I see, it's one of the tall tales. From the way I see it, Yamashita didn't have time to stash the gold. Or I could offer another theory. Maybe before Yamashita, they were already stashing treasure. So that's why he doesn't know. That's another theory. And naming the treasure after him could be a diversionary tactic. So again, we really have to study. We should start collecting all the tales, whether chismis or not, and look at the maps, if there are any, if they're fake or not, collect and try to look at which ones were the most credible.
Thank you very much, sir. And here's another one from our FB viewers. With our FB viewers, RJ Donesa, some authors claimed Marcos also made use of psychics to locate some gold. Do you believe in this?
That is true. Again, Marcos is a believer of the occult arts, and we can know because he was also very superstitious. So again, and he would believe that some elementals are guardians of treasures. So maraming kwentong ganyan. So it is not far-fetched that he used psychics, and also as I said, he was so obsessed with the treasure, and and of course he may have found some. That is true, because when he was just a congressman, and that's a story. A story alleged. All of these are allegations. So when he was still single, in order to impress his Imelda, according to, again, allegedly, he showed her to a room and showed her to a vault filled with gold bars and said, "Oh, I found the Yamashita treasure." So question, will a congressman at the time with the salary, will he start accumulating very expensive items like gold bars? There are other ways of how to accumulate wealth at the time. Remember back in 1949 when China was being overrun by communists, and many of the Chinese immigrants were coming to the Philippines with treasure, with gold, with all those stuff. So again, this is again a speculation. So could the gold have come from the Chinese, the rich Chinese refugees? Again, there's also another story about congressmen allegedly having quotas on Chinese immigrants. How many of them they can sponsor? That's what I hear, and we have to investigate that. Of course, a lot of people they don't want to talk, especially on that matter, because number one, it's very hot, because it will also involve the Chinese resident community in the Philippines, so it could open a lot of kind of worms, and so there are many things. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Another one from Matthew Simon. May I ask Dr. Viana if he has encountered the book Gold Warriors by Sterling and Peggy Seagrave? If so, how would you evaluate, sir, the credibility and integrity of the said book?
Yeah, if you read the book, I would take it with a grain of salt, because again, so how could he get access to secret Japanese papers, the maps, and again, you have to take it. You have to doubt some of the claims. I believe were quite too fabulous to believe. Again, it involves a lot of. It involves conspiracy theories, such as involving the one of the emperor's brothers who was said to be in charge, Emperor Hirohito's brothers, who was said to be in charge in the shipping of gold from various places in Asia to Japan. So I would like to know where he got his sources. Because again, you really have to investigate, because I am very skeptical about his sources. And of course, as I said, it will still open a can of worms if other countries will know where the treasure come from, and they found that it came from their country, and of course they will file claims against it and they try to recover it back. Yeah, so definitely I would be very skeptical about that book. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Another one from one of our Zoom participants, from Miss Maria Selgima. Oh, okay, so from Maria Sel. Good afternoon, Dr. Viana. Standing on your historical expertise, do you agree of this claim that General Yamashita, as the dumbest general of his time in terms of military strategy? I heard of this claim from a documentary, but I can't recall the source. Sir, what can you say about this?
Actually, on the contrary, because I consider him a brilliant tactician, because Yamashita, if war did not end in September 1945, he could have still lasted at least 2 years more. So I think even Filipinos should learn from him, because when you compare Yamashita with MacArthur, when he retreated to Bataan, he basically retreated to a cul-de-sac. You're surrounded by water, the West Philippine Sea and Manila Bay, and you're hemmed in Bataan, and therefore the Japanese can just pound you at will. While Yamashita had the wisdom of retreating to the Cordilleras, so and fighting a war of attrition, it gave the Americans and Filipinos a difficult time. So I would also like to think forward, because even General Antonio Luna, during his time, thought about retreating to the Cordillera and holding up the Americans until they get tired, and public opinion in the States will tell them, go ahead and negotiate with those Filipinos, and maybe you can win your independence. Unfortunately, we know what happened to General Luna. He got killed because of the jealousy of Aguinaldo. And Aguinaldo made a mistake of not basing himself in the mountain. Instead, he made enemies of the natives. It treated them like savages, and stole their food. And that's not the way of getting support from the people. But Yamashita, Yamashita's forces stayed in the Cordilleras, and there are still towns in the Cordilleras. There are towns in the Cordilleras which actually never fell to the Americans. So again, I would not consider him dumb. He's quite brilliant. Okay, so even better than War Plan Orange, because War Plan Orange would only call for the retreat to Bataan and waiting for American reinforcements. Yamashita never expected any reinforcement from Japan. He would just go to Cordillera and find it out until either all of his men, he and his men, were dead, but at the same time inflicting heavy casualties on the Americans and the Filipinos. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think that's it for all of our questions from our FB viewers and our Zoom participants. But we have here some comments, sir. I would just like to read. One of them is from Tristan Osteria. Thank you, Doc Viana, for this very revealing talk. We don't have these in many history texts or textbooks. This one is from Luisa Peliazar Revecho. That Yamashita treasures cost many lives, especially for those treasure hunters.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you very much for that, sir. Thank you for participating in our Q&A. Thank you for answering our viewers questions. Do you have any thing you would like to say, sir, before we say goodbye? Hello, sir. Hello, Sir Viana. Okay, I think Professor Viana is experiencing some technical difficulties on his end. Let's wait for a couple of seconds. Okay, anyway, I think Professor Viana left. So that's it for today. Thank you very much. I am now giving back the floor to our host.
Thank you very much, Ms. Felici, and for Professor Viana for responding to all our viewers' questions from Zoom and on Facebook. So as we now near the end of our program, let us have PVAO Administrator, Undersecretary Ernesto G. Carolina, for his closing remarks.
To the participants of today's historical webinar, a pleasant day to all of you. So much stories and tales about our past have been obscured for so long. The epic tales of battles and the riveting legends and myths during the war were not taught nor discussed enough, making us unaware of the many facets of our own history. That is the reason this webinar aspires to enlighten the minds of our countrymen, especially our youth, about the real stories and events that transpired before us. In so doing, our generation and the generation after us will have a clearer understanding and appreciation for the people who sacrificed the most to win our freedom, our veterans. This webinar also highlights the bravery and unity of our veterans as they fought for our independence. Their ideals, their values continue to inspire us today in our own fight against the pandemic. As such, I would like to commend our participants for not only joining in the discussion about the Yamashita Treasure, but also for allowing themselves the opportunity to enrich the knowledge about our long and rich history. Joining this webinar is one step towards appreciating and perpetuating the stories of our veterans. Allow me also to thank our speaker for today, Associate Professor Augusto Viana from the University of Santo Tomas, Department of History, for giving us the opportunity to learn more about the famed Yamashita Treasure. Your presentation on the mystery and myth of the Yamashita Treasure truly piqued our interest and provided us a thorough account and narrative about the treasure. Again, thanks to everyone who participated in today's webinar, and we hope that we will see you again in our upcoming episodes. A pleasant day to one and all.
on the next
Once
one.
again, for those who were able to pre-register, we will be sending a link to your email. Kindly accomplish the evaluation form. You will be receiving your e-certificate after a day. If you haven't received it yet, kindly check your spam folder just in case it was delivered there instead of your inbox. Also, we are inviting everyone to our symposium on March 25, 2021 for our morning session. That is 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. We have Dr. Ray Carlo T. Gonzalez with Macario Peralta and the 6th Military District, and Dr. Ricardo Trota Jose with Balantang Memorial Cemetery National Shrine with a virtual tour in the said shrine. And for the afternoon session, we have for 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. that is, we have Dr. Augusto V. de Viana with the Mount Samat National Shrine and the tour with the said shrine, and NHCP Executive Director Restituto L. Aguilar with World War II Filipino Veteran Recognition.
Okay. So again, we hope to see you on the next episode. I am Grace Tahagun.
And I am Nico Orero. We have been your hosts for today. Thank you and good afternoon.